Stop the music. He is not performing for you. Emily Carter's voice cut through the Blackthorn Ballroom with such quiet force that 300 guests seemed to forget how to breathe. The orchestra stopped in the middle of a note. Crystal glasses hovered inches above pale lips. Even the candles appeared to hold still. At the center of the marble floor, 10-year-old Prince Ethan Blackwood sat with his hands pressed over his ears, his small shoulders drawn tight beneath a formal black coat. A silver goblet rolled slowly beside him, tracing a bright circle before falling silent. Around the boy stood members of the oldest vampire families in America, dressed in velvet, diamonds, and expressions of polished cruelty. Moments earlier, they had laughed when Ethan failed to recite the ceremonial greeting. They had whispered that the Vampire King's only son was unfit to inherit anything. Now they stared at the young waitress who had stepped between them and the prince. Emily's serving tray lay abandoned near the edge of the dance floor. Her shoes had cost $12 at a thrift store, and the hem of her uniform had been repaired twice by hand. She knew she did not belong beneath chandeliers worth more than the apartment building where she lived. She knew the rules. Never speak unless spoken to. Never interrupt a royal ceremony. Never approach the king's son. But rules became meaningless when they were used to excuse cruelty. Emily lowered herself to the floor, leaving several feet of space between Ethan and her. She did not touch him. She did not ask him to look at her. Instead, she slowly removed a dark cloth napkin from her apron and placed it over the nearest crystal lantern, softening the sharp light that flashed across his face. Ethan's fingers moved against his sleeves in a frantic rhythm. For quick taps. A pause. For more. Emily answered by tapping the marble once, slowly, then twice. His breathing remained uneven, but his hands stopped moving for half a second. It was enough. You are safe, she said, barely louder than a whisper. No one is going to make you speak. A woman in a silver gown gave a cold laugh. The servant believes she understands him. Emily rose. Her knees trembled, but her voice did not. He understands every word you say. The laughter vanished. Not answering you does not mean he cannot hear you. Looking away does not mean he is not paying attention. And being overwhelmed does not make him weak. Somewhere behind the crowd, a chair moved across stone. The sound was soft, yet every vampire in the room reacted. Heads lowered. Bodies stiffened. The air turned cold enough to fog the edges of the windows. Emily looked toward the raised platform at the far end of the ballroom. Vampire King Damian Blackwood had risen from his throne. He was tall, dressed entirely in black, his skin noticeably paler than every human face in the room. His gray eyes held the stillness of winter and the authority of a man who had commanded kingdoms long before the city outside had a name. He descended the steps without hurry. No one moved aside until he reached them. Then the crowd opened like a curtain. Damian's gaze passed over the silent orchestra, the watching nobles, and the woman in silver. Finally, he looked at Emily. Who, he asked softly, gave you permission to command my ballroom? Emily swallowed. Behind her, Ethan reached forward and caught the edge of her sleeve. Emily felt Ethan's fingers tighten around her sleeve. The gesture was small, almost hidden beneath the fall of her black uniform, but Damian saw it. His gaze dropped to his son's hand, and something changed in his face. Not softness. Not yet. Something older and more dangerous than anger. Recognition. He gave me permission, Emily said. A quiet murmur moved through the ballroom. Lady Victoria Ashcroft stepped forward in her silver gown, her smile thin and polished. Your Majesty, the girl is confused. The prince was asked to complete a simple ceremonial greeting. She interrupted before he could recover. Emily looked at Ethan. His breathing had slowed, but his eyes remained fixed on the floor, following the fractured reflections of the chandeliers. The light was too bright. The room was too crowded. Every whisper landed like another hand reaching for him. He was not recovering, Emily said. He was trying to survive the noise. Victoria's smile disappeared. Damian stopped 3 feet from Emily. Up close, his presence felt like winter entering the room. His skin was unnaturally pale beneath the candlelight, his dark hair perfectly still, his gray eyes fixed on her with unnerving precision. And how would a temporary server know what my son needs? He asked. Emily could feel every guest waiting for her to fail. She could also feel Ethan's grip on her sleeve. Because I was paying attention. Silence returned. Damian's eyes narrowed. Before he could answer, Ethan tapped 4 times against Emily's wrist. Pause. For more? She glanced down. His free hand pointed toward the covered lantern. Less light? She asked gently. Ethan tapped once. Yes. Emily looked toward the nearest servant. Please dim the eastern chandeliers. The servant did not move. He looked at Damien instead. For one long second, the king said nothing. Then he lifted 2 fingers. Half the ballroom darkened. Golden light softened across the marble. Ethan's shoulders lowered. A faint breath left him. Damien watched his son as if witnessing a language he should have learned years ago. What else? He asked. Emily noticed the missing silver watch that had rested beside Ethan's place earlier. She remembered seeing him turn it between his fingers when she first entered the ballroom. Where is his watch? Victoria answered too quickly. It was distracting him. Ethan's head lifted. His eyes found Victoria for less than a second before dropping again. His tapping changed. 3 quick beats. 2 slow. 3 quick. Emily's stomach tightened. She had heard that rhythm before, years ago, from her younger brother during a fire drill at school. Not fear. Warning. Ethan, she whispered. Are you telling me something is wrong? His fingers struck the pattern again. 3 quick. 2 slow. 3 quick. Damien heard it too. He does that when he is anxious, he said, but uncertainty had entered his voice. Emily followed Ethan's gaze. It moved past Victoria, past the orchestra, and stopped at the raised platform where Damien's untouched wine waited beside the throne. The dark liquid reflected the candlelight without trembling. Ethan pointed at the glass. Every face in the room turned toward it. Victoria went perfectly still. Emily looked at Damien. I do not think he was trying to finish a greeting, she said. I think he has been trying to warn you. Damien did not look at the wine. He looked at Ethan. For the first time that evening, the vampire king seemed less concerned with the threat beside his throne than with the child who had tried to reveal it. No one touches that glass, he commanded. 2 royal guards moved toward the platform, but Damien raised one hand. Seal the ballroom. Quietly, the massive doors closed with a low, final sound. No guest protested. Emily felt Ethan release her sleeve, only to press his fingertips against the dark napkin in her hand. The cloth had softened the nearest light, but the remaining chandeliers still scattered sharp reflections across the floor. She folded the napkin into a narrow strip and placed it over the silver trim of a serving cart. Ethan watched the bright surface disappear. His breathing steadied. Damien noticed everything. You understood that, he said. I recognized it, Emily answered. My younger brother, Caleb, used to notice danger before anyone else because he paid attention to details people ignored. He could not always explain what he knew, especially in a crowded room. Ethan tapped once against the floor. Emily glanced at him. Was someone near the king's glass? Ethan tapped once again. Yes. A restless whisper moved through the guests. Lady Victoria stepped forward, her silver gown catching the remaining candlelight. This is becoming absurd. The boy points at a cup, and a waitress turns it into an assassination plot. Ethan flinched at the sharpness of her voice. Emily lowered her own. Did you see the person? He did not answer. His gaze moved toward the orchestra, then to the empty space beside the conductor. A golden music stand stood there, polished and untouched. Emily remembered the woman in silver speaking privately with the conductor before the ceremony. She remembered the flash of something small passing between them. A key. Where is his watch? Emily asked again. Victoria's expression remained smooth, but her fingers tightened around her jeweled fan. A servant removed it. Which servant? Damien asked. The room seemed to shrink around his voice. Victoria turned toward him. Your Majesty, surely you do not believe that I would concern myself with a child's trinket. Ethan's hands began moving faster. 3 quick taps. 2 slow. 3 quick. Emily knelt beside him again. The watch matters, does it not? 1 tap. Did it record something? Ethan froze. Then he looked directly at her. His amber eyes were bright beneath the softened light. 1 tap. Damien's face became perfectly still. The watch was designed by my engineers, he said. It records sound when Ethan presses the crown twice. He uses it when speaking becomes difficult. Emily looked toward the orchestra. The conductor had gone pale. His eyes kept returning to the golden music stand. Damien followed his gaze. Open it, the king ordered. A guard lifted the narrow lid beneath the stand. Inside rested Ethan's silver watch, still turning, still recording. Beside it lay a small crystal vial. The ballroom went silent for a second time, but this silence felt different. It was no longer the silence of embarrassment. It was the silence of people realizing the child they had mocked had been the only one paying attention. Damien turned toward Ethan, and the ancient cold in his face gave way to something almost like regret. "You tried to tell me," he said. Ethan did not look at him. He reached for Emily's sleeve instead. Then the watch began to play a woman's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Once the king drinks, the council vote begins." The woman's recorded voice continued through the ballroom. "The noise will keep the prince occupied. When the king is weakened, no one will question whether the boy is fit to inherit." Every guest turned toward Lady Victoria. For the first time that evening, her perfect composure cracked. Only slightly. A breath held too long. A glance toward the sealed doors. Then she lifted her chin. "A voice can be imitated," she said, "especially by someone desperate to impress a king." Her eyes settled on Emily. The accusation moved through the room faster than a spoken command. Human. Temporary server. Poor enough to be purchased. Unknown enough to be blamed. Emily felt the weight of hundreds of suspicious stares, but Ethan remained beside her, one hand still holding her sleeve. Damien approached the golden music stand. He did not touch the viol. He studied it with the cold attention of someone who had survived centuries by noticing what others hoped he would miss. "Who prepared the royal table?" he asked. Marcus Hale stepped reluctantly from the line of servants. His face had lost all color. "The assignments were changed this afternoon, Your Majesty." "By whom?" Marcus swallowed. The order carried Miss Carter's employee number. The ballroom shifted. Emily stared at him. "That is impossible. I was assigned to the west tables until 20 minutes before the ceremony." Counselor Richard Vale emerged from the crowd, silver hair gleaming beneath the chandeliers. "Then perhaps we should ask why she was moved close enough to the prince to create this performance." His tone was calm, almost sympathetic. That made it worse. "She interrupts the ceremony, claims to understand the air, discovers a conveniently placed recording, and directs our attention toward Lady Victoria." An impressive chain of coincidences. Two guards stepped toward Emily. Ethan moved instantly, placing himself between them and her. The room inhaled as one. Damien's voice dropped. "Do not approach my son." The guard stopped. Ethan's fingers pressed against Emily's wrist. 3 taps. A pause. 1 tap. Then he pointed toward Marcus, not Victoria. Emily studied the manager. His right hand was closed tightly around something. "Mr. Hale," she said, "what are you holding?" Marcus took a step backward. Damien looked at him. "Open your hand." Slowly, Marcus obeyed. A small golden key lay across his palm. The same key Emily had seen near the orchestra before the ceremony. Marcus began speaking too quickly. "Lady Victoria gave it to me, but I did not know what it opened. She said the prince's watch had become disruptive. She ordered me to place it beneath the music stand." Victoria's expression turned to ice. "You are lying to save yourself." "No," Emily said. "He is frightened. There is a difference." Vale gave a quiet laugh. "And now the waitress reads minds as well." Emily ignored him. She looked at Ethan, then at the watch. The recording had not ended. A faint rustle came through its tiny speaker, followed by a man's voice. "Lower. Controlled. Familiar. Make certain the human server receives the blame. The king will protect his son, but he will not protect a stranger." Every eye moved toward Counselor Vale. Damien did not. He kept watching Emily. "You were chosen before you entered this room," he said. Emily felt the truth settle over her with terrible clarity. Someone had not merely planned to disgrace Ethan and weaken the king. Someone had placed her in the center of the trap. Then the sealed ballroom doors opened by themselves, and a guard rushed inside carrying a file marked with Emily Carter's name. The guard carried the file directly to Damien, but Emily recognized the photograph clipped to its cover before the king opened it. Her own face stared back at her beneath a red security seal. "Where did you get that?" she asked. "From the Royal Intelligence Office," the guard replied. "It was delivered less than an hour ago with instructions to detain Emily Carter if she approached the prince." Damien opened the folder. His pale eyes moved across the first page, then stopped. "It claims you worked for an organization called the Ashen Circle." Emily shook her head. "I have never heard of it." Counselor Vale folded his hands behind his back. "How convenient." Damien continued reading. The file listed secret payments, false addresses, and meetings with people Emily had never seen. It even included a signed statement claiming she had accepted money to enter the gala and manipulate Ethan. The signature looked almost perfect. Almost. Emily stepped closer, forgetting for a moment that she was approaching a king. That is not mine. Lady Victoria recovered enough to smile. Of course you would say that. Ethan released Emily's sleeve and moved toward his father. Damien lowered the file so the boy could see it. Ethan studied the pages, then tapped the photograph twice. His expression tightened. He pointed to the lower corner. Emily followed his finger. A date had been printed beneath the picture. That photograph was supposedly taken 3 weeks ago, she said. But I cut my hair 6 days ago. A murmur passed through the guests. The woman in the image wore Emily's current hairstyle. Damien looked from the picture to her face. Someone created this file after you were hired for tonight. Then they knew I would be here, Emily said. Before I did. Marcus Hale lowered his eyes. The staffing agency requested her by name. Emily turned toward him. I have never worked at Blackthorn before. No, Marcus said quietly. But the request came with a bonus large enough that no one questioned it. Damien closed the folder. The sound was soft, but it silenced the ballroom more effectively than a shout. Who authorized the payment? Marcus looked toward Counselor Vale. Vale's calm expression finally slipped. This is becoming theater. Ethan suddenly covered his ears again. Emily noticed why. A faint ringing had begun somewhere beneath the music platform. Too high for most humans to hear clearly, but sharp enough to disturb him. Damien heard it as well. His head turned toward the orchestra. There is another device in this room, he said. Ethan tapped 3 times against his chest, then pointed toward the ceiling. Emily looked up. Hidden among the crystal branches of the central chandelier, a tiny red light blinked. Once. Twice. A surveillance lens. They have been recording everything, Emily whispered. Damien lifted his hand, and every curtain in the ballroom closed at once, blocking the city lights beyond the windows. No one leaves, he said. No one speaks unless questioned. Vale took one careful step backward. Ethan saw it. He reached for Emily again, but this time he placed something in her palm. A small silver button, engraved with the crest of the Royal Council. She looked at his coat. None were missing. Then she looked at Vale's sleeve. One empty thread remained where a matching button should have been. Ethan had not only heard the conspiracy, he had been collecting proof. Emily held the button up where Damien could see it. Your son knew exactly who was near the throne, she said. Damien turned toward Vale, but before he could speak, the hidden device above them projected a woman's image across the darkened ceiling. Emily's breath stopped. The face belonged to her mother, who had been missing for 12 years. Emily stared at the image above the ballroom, unable to breathe. Her mother looked exactly as Emily remembered her on the morning she disappeared. White skin warmed by sunlight, brown hair pinned loosely behind her ears, and a navy cardigan with one missing button. She stood inside a stone chamber marked with the Blackwood crest. My name is Sarah Carter. The recording began, her voice faint beneath the hum of the hidden projector. If my daughter is seeing this, then the council has finally used her to reach the prince. Emily's knees weakened. Damien stepped beside her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but he did not touch her. You knew her, Emily whispered. The king's pale face revealed nothing, yet his silence answered first. She served this court, he said. 12 years ago. The recording continued. Sarah explained that she had worked as a communication specialist for Queen Amelia after Ethan was born. The queen had noticed that her infant son responded differently to sound, light, and touch. While the court demanded obedience, Sarah taught Amelia to observe him without forcing him to perform. Together, they designed the silver watch, the tapping patterns, and the dark cloth covers that softened the palace lights. Emily looked at the napkin in her hand. She had used the same methods without knowing where they began. Caleb, she whispered. Her mother had practiced everything at home with Emily's younger brother. What Emily believed had been ordinary family knowledge had started inside the royal court. Above them, Sarah's expression became urgent. Counselor Vale believes difference is weakness. He fears a king who listens more than he commands, and he fears an heir who notices what others overlook. If anything happens to Queen Amelia or me, protect Ethan from rooms designed to make him fail. Vale moved toward the doors. Damien did not turn. Take one more step, the king said quietly, and every person here will know you have chosen guilt over dignity. Vale stopped. Lady Victoria's jeweled fan slipped from her fingers and struck the floor. The sound made Ethan flinch, but Emily tapped once against his wrist. "Safe," he answered once. Damien watched the exchange, regret darkening his silver eyes. "Why was I never shown this recording?" he asked. The projected image flickered. Sarah looked directly toward the unseen camera. "Because the king will trust the council after the queen is gone. Grief will make him protect Ethan by hiding him, and isolation will make the prince easier to discredit." Damien closed his eyes for 1 second. It was the first time Emily had seen the ancient ruler look wounded by truth rather than threatened by accusation. "I thought keeping him away from the court kept him safe," he said. "They used that distance to teach the court that he could not belong." Ethan released Emily and walked toward his father. He did not raise his arms or speak. He simply placed his palm against Damien's sleeve. The king lowered himself until they were at the same height. "I should have listened sooner," Damien said. Ethan tapped twice against his wrist. Then he pointed toward the image of Sarah. The recording was ending, but one final sentence filled the dark ballroom. "Emily, if you are there, the queen left something for you beneath the eastern tower." The projection vanished. Darkness returned. Then a deep sound traveled through the walls, like an ancient lock turning after years of silence. Damien looked toward the eastern side of the palace. "That tower has been sealed since Amelia died." Ethan took Emily's hand and placed the silver watch in her palm. On its back, beneath the blackwood crest, newly awakened letters glowed in soft gold. They spelled her name. The golden letters on the watch brightened until Emily could see their reflection in Damien's eyes. Her name had been engraved beneath the royal crest, as if someone had expected this night long before she was old enough to remember her mother. Ethan tapped once against the watch, then pointed toward the eastern wall. Damien rose. "The ballroom remains sealed," he said. "No guest leaves until the council answers every question." Counselor Vale opened his mouth, but Damien silenced him with a glance. "Captain, remove all communication devices. Escort Lady Victoria and Counselor Vale to the West Chamber. They will be questioned under royal law." There was no shouting, no struggle, only the quiet rearranging of power as the guards stepped forward and the nobles lowered their eyes. Emily should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt the weight of the watch in her palm and the ache of 12 unanswered years pressing against her chest. "My mother knew Queen Amelia," she said. "She knew Ethan. She knew someone would come after him. Why did she never come home?" Damien's expression tightened. "I do not know." Emily looked at him. "You are the king. And tonight you have seen how much can be hidden from a king who trusts the wrong people." The honesty in his voice unsettled her more than a command would have. Ethan moved between them and touched 2 fingers to the watch. A narrow line of gold appeared across its face, forming an arrow that pointed toward a side passage behind the throne. Damien noticed it. "That corridor has no entrance." Ethan walked to the wall and pressed the watch against a carved stone rose. The marble shifted with a deep mechanical sigh. A hidden doorway opened, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Cold air flowed upward, carrying the scent of cedar, old paper, and something faintly familiar to Emily. Lavender soap. Her mother's soap. She took 1 step forward. Damien caught her wrist gently, then released it at once when Ethan looked at his hand. "We do not know what is below," he said. "Then we find out together," Emily answered. Damien studied her for a moment before removing his black coat and placing it around Ethan's shoulders. The boy accepted it without resistance. That small gesture seemed to affect the king more than he allowed anyone to see. They entered the passage in silence. The stairs curved beneath the palace for nearly 40 feet, each step lighting beneath Emily's shoes as the watch guided them. At the bottom stood a silver door covered in symbols of moons, thorns, and open hands. Emily lifted the watch. The symbols awakened one by one. The door opened. Inside was a room preserved exactly as it had been 12 years earlier. Children's drawings covered one wall. Dark cloth softened every lamp. Shelves held communication cards, journals, and dozens of silver watches. At the center sat a wooden table with 2 chairs and a sealed envelope addressed to Emily Carter. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter inside contained only 6 words. "Trust the prince. Do not trust the crown." Emily slowly raised her eyes toward Damien. He had already seen the message. Before either of them could speak, Ethan walked to the far wall and uncovered a portrait hidden beneath a white sheet. Queen Amelia stood beside Sarah Carter, both women smiling. Between them was a second child, a little girl with Emily's eyes and the Blackwood royal mark glowing on her wrist. Emily moved closer to the portrait, her heartbeat loud in the hidden room. The little girl could not have been more than 5 years old. She had Emily's brown eyes, Emily's pale skin, and the same slight tilt of the head Sarah Carter made whenever she listened carefully. But the silver mark on the child's wrist belonged to the Blackwood bloodline. Damien stood perfectly still. "That symbol appears only on members of the royal family," he said. Emily looked at him. "Are you saying that child was related to you?" Ethan touched the edge of the frame, then pointed to Emily. One tap. "Yes." Damien lifted the portrait from the wall and examined the back. A folded document had been secured beneath the wooden panel. The seal belonged to Queen Amelia. He opened it carefully. "This is a declaration of guardianship," he said. Amelia placed a royal child under Sarah Carter's protection. Emily's throat tightened. What was her name? Damien read the final line, and the color seemed to leave even his already pale face. Elena Blackwood. Emily stared at the painted child. A memory surfaced without warning. A little girl sharing crackers with her beneath a kitchen table. A silver bracelet hidden under a sweater cuff. Her mother saying they had to move before sunrise. "I knew her," Emily whispered. "She lived with us for a few months. My mother told me she was a cousin." Ethan tapped rapidly against the frame, then pointed toward a locked cabinet beneath the journals. The watch opened it. Inside rested another recording device and a stack of council documents. Damien activated the device. Queen Amelia's voice filled the room. She explained that Elena had been born with the rare ability to sense false intentions, an ability the council wanted to control. Sarah had hidden the child while Amelia gathered evidence against Vale and Victoria. Before she could present it, both women disappeared, and Elena vanished from every royal record. Emily looked at the documents. Payment orders, altered medical reports, instructions to isolate Ethan and describe every difference as a failure. Proof that the conspiracy had lasted more than a decade. Damien closed his hand around the pages. We returned to the ballroom now. When they entered, every guest remained exactly where he had left them. Vale and Victoria stood beneath guard near the western doors. Damien walked to the center of the floor with Ethan on one side and Emily on the other. He placed the documents on the royal table. "You called my son incapable because he noticed what you failed to hide," he said. "You called this woman a servant because you believed poverty made her powerless. Tonight, both of them protected this court while its oldest families protected their pride." Victoria tried to speak, but Ethan raised one hand. The room obeyed him before Damien gave any order. Ethan placed his watch on the table and played the complete recordings. Every voice, every instruction, every lie. When the final message ended, Damien turned to the council. "Lady Victoria Ashcroft and Councillor Richard Vale are removed from authority pending judgment under royal law. Every order concerning my son will be reviewed. Every person who helped isolate him will answer publicly." Then he stepped aside. "The final word belongs to the prince." Ethan looked across the ballroom at the nobles who had laughed at him. His voice was quiet, but no one missed it. "It stays quiet." Damien lowered his head to his son. The entire ballroom followed. Emily watched hundreds of ancient vampires bow to the child they had dismissed. Then Ethan turned toward her and held out the royal documents. Beneath the queen's seal was one final handwritten line. Elena Blackwood was still alive, and Sarah Carter had taken her to the only place beyond the vampire king's reach. The handwritten line changed everything. Emily read it twice, then a third time, as though the words might rearrange themselves into something easier to understand. Her mother was alive. Elena Blackwood was alive. Somewhere beyond Damien's reach, they had been waiting for the truth to surface. Around them, the ballroom remained silent by Ethan's command. Damien looked at Emily, but his voice carried none of the authority that had once frozen the room. "I will help you find them." Emily folded the document carefully. "As king," she asked, "or as the man my mother warned me not to trust?" The question moved through the nobles like a cold wind. Damien did not look away. As a father who failed to see what was happening inside his own home, Ethan stepped between them and placed one hand in Emily's palm and the other in his father's. The gesture was simple, deliberate, a bridge neither adult had earned, but both understood. Damien lowered his head. "You will not be detained, he said. You will not be ordered to remain here. You will be paid for your work tonight, and you may leave whenever you choose. Emily looked down at Ethan. His fingers tapped once against her hand, then twice. Stay? Not forever. Just now. I will stay for 30 days, she said. Not as a servant. Not as someone who is expected to make Ethan easier for the court. Damien's pale face remained still, but relief softened his eyes. Then name your terms. He controls the lights in every room he enters. No one touches him without permission. No one forces him to speak in public. And anyone who calls him broken answers to me before they answer to you. A faint sound passed through the ballroom. Not laughter. Surprise. Damien glanced toward the nobles. Those terms are accepted. Then he faced the entire court. From this night forward, my son will not be measured by how well he imitates you. This court will be measured by how well it respects him. One by one, servants dimmed the remaining chandeliers. The sharp brilliance softened into warm gold. Ethan removed his hands from his ears. For the first time since the ceremony began, he walked willingly to the center of the ballroom. He picked up the silver watch, pressed its crown, and stopped the recording. The evening was over because he had chosen to end it. Later, when the last guest had departed and dawn began turning the windows gray, Emily stood with Damien and Ethan at the eastern tower. The hidden room had revealed a map inside Queen Amelia's journal. One location was circled in blue ink, a small town in northern Maine, nearly 400 miles away. Beside it, Sarah had written a date. Tomorrow. Damien prepared a car, but Emily noticed Ethan staring down the empty corridor. At the far end, a door sealed since Queen Amelia's death slowly opened. A woman stood beyond it, wearing a navy cardigan with one missing button. Emily could not move. The woman raised one trembling hand. You listened to him, Sarah Carter whispered. Just like I knew you would. Ethan stepped forward, but Sarah's eyes shifted toward Damien. We have very little time, she said. Elena is coming home, and when she does, every vampire kingdom in America will learn why the council feared these children. Outside, the first sunlight touched the palace windows, and Emily finally understood that silence had never meant emptiness. Sometimes it was where the truth had been waiting to be heard.